Where I want to start today is just asking you what you do. When you meet someone for the first time and they say, "What do you do?" How do you respond to that? And then I want to get into more of the story and all the amazing things we're going to talk about today.
Okay, that is a very good question. And as you know, this has been something that I have worked on to make it simple. But I teach people about their own human operating system. I think it's unfortunate that we have mostly all gotten to adulthood without really understanding the basics of our own human operating system. I mean, we all know how to operate our iPhones, but there are just things that we are, that are causing us to live out of alignment with how we were designed to function. And I just feel very passionate about teaching people simple things, keeping it simple.
Yeah, no need to go too complex. It's not rocket science. It's breathing, eating, sitting, sleeping, all the things. And I know we're going to get into it today, but one of the first questions I want to ask you is why this interest in health? What started you on your health journey?
Well, when I was 13, almost 14, my dad died of a heart attack at 41. And that was a huge pivotal moment in my life. And, because he wasn't overweight, he was a drinker and a smoker, but that was pretty shocking at 41. I knew that was young even when I was young, but now as almost 54, as an almost 54-year-old, I realize how young that is. And I made a decision immediately that that was never going to be my fate, because even doctors were saying that my brother and I are going to have to be on statins, and that's our genetics. And I naturally had high cholesterol, which I didn't realize. I started having my cholesterol taken. So I worried about that, because back then, your HDL and LDL was your fate. I know now that it's not. And my health journey wasn't always so healthy, because in the 80s, that was, 85 when he passed away, it was thin equaled healthy, eat less, work out more. And I have a tendency I'm an overachiever, so I ate less and worked out more and more, and was really working against myself. So it's been a journey. My health journey wasn't always so healthy.
I love that you admit that, because I think it's easy to see someone who is very healthy, who looks like you, to think that it's always been easy, they've always had it together, they've always been perfectly healthy. And to bring in a little bit of the humility and humanness of the journey, to say that it's not always easy, it's not always healthy. That's a big theme of the Dare to Dream podcast, is talking about, we'll talk about the good parts, but we'll also talk about the struggles and the hard parts.
Yeah. And I went on like that. So basically from teens into my 20s, and my identity was wrapped around being the healthy girl. And that was I was really blindsided when at 28, I got married at 26, 27, and I worked all the time. I taught spin training. I was just always on the go, and just, again, my identity was wrapped around eating healthy, working out, being super fit and very thin. And when I went, tried to get pregnant, it wasn't happening. And that was a real blow, because I couldn't figure out why. And we ended up, after trying for a year and a half, we went and did in vitro, did 2 rounds, which we were newly married. That was very expensive. Insurance didn't take care of it. And the in vitros didn't work. And so my husband and I both decided, let's just take a year off and see what happens. We had so much heat on getting pregnant, and we both just were like, let's just take a break. And, always the right people show up at the right time. And someone told me about an acupuncturist, and I was desperate. I'm like, I'll do anything. So I saw this woman, and she was straight out of China, MD in China, so brilliant. And I don't even know if it was the acupuncture, but she took one look at me, and she looked at my tongue. I guess I can see what's going on a lot with your tongue. And she said, you have too much fire in your body, and your body doesn't trust you. You need to slow down, and you need to walk, and you need to stop running. I was running in every area of my life, and I took that very seriously. I started walking in every area of my life. I ate more. I rested more. I walked and didn't run. And again, took that whole year off, went back, still had to do in vitro, but it worked. And better than that is that I was able to really learn so much during my pregnancy. And when I had the twins, they came a little bit early, but they were super healthy, but they had to stay in the NICU in the hospital for a couple weeks. And when I was there, a nurse said to me, if you want to have any kind of life, you're going to have to get these babies dialed in with their circadian rhythm. And I was like, I mean, I certainly had heard of that, but I didn't really understand what it was. So, along the journey, all these pieces are coming together in what is healthy and what it does mean to create health in a human. And so I dove into circadian rhythm so hard. And even before they came home from the hospital, I was like, learned what it was about, and, helping them to understand when it's nighttime we sleep, when it's daytime we're awake. And they came home at 3 weeks old, and I really started working on, at night when they would I'd have to get up and feed them, but really keeping the lights dim. There was a little light in the hallway that I would turn on, a little night light, and I would hold them, I'd change them, but I wouldn't engage them because I wanted them to I would feed them, change them, put them right back down, and they would go to sleep. And then at their morning feeding, I would, be super happy and engaging and open the windows and get them dressed. And they came home at 3 weeks, and by 6 weeks they were sleeping 6 hours. And, by 3 months old, they were sleeping a good 8 hours a night. And I was like, okay, this is awesome. Because I had friends that had babies at the same age, and they were having such a hard time. And certainly having twins was tough, but I was sleeping at night, and that was life-changing. And I just felt like their temperaments were so much better than other babies because they got connected to that circadian rhythm, so they had certainty. Because whether we know it or not, that's part of human nature. We want certainty. And for them, they knew what was coming next, not consciously, and it really made for healthier humans. And then I got pregnant naturally. So that told me that I was really healthy. So I had 3 babies in 2.5 years.
Wow, I love that. And did the circadian rhythm, circadian syncing work with the third child as well?
Well, that's a great question, because I thought, maybe I just got lucky with the twins. But I did the same exact thing. And by 10 weeks, he was obviously a full, he was 8 pounds at birth. So he was already a hearty baby. But by 10 weeks, he was sleeping through the night. And that was, I say sleeping through the night. He was sleeping 8 hours plus, and then it, went up from there. But it worked.
I mean, that's amazing. That's definitely my biggest fear of becoming a future dad is my sleep. I am a sleep princess prima donna. If I get less than 8 hours, I'm grumpy. If I get less than 7 hours, I'm really grumpy. So it's something hard. I've been thinking about.
It's hard. And those first few months with a baby is tough. And I've always thought that would be a fun job to go and help people, get their babies in sync, because it really is life-changing when we sleep. It just changes our whole chemistry, and we can survive it still wasn't super easy during the day having 3 babies. I had 3 in diapers, 3 in cribs, 3 in car seats, but I was mostly well rested. So that made it certainly a lot easier.
It's so cool. And I still have chills from when you said that the Chinese doctor looked at your tongue, and from just looking at your tongue could tell things. There's something about that Eastern tradition of medicine that fascinates me.
It's amazing.
And how can someone know something just from looking at your tongue, or they look at your feet, they do stuff with acupuncture? It's crazy. And it makes me think about something you told me when you were doing my headshots. So for everyone listening, Dani is also a photographer. You said that you can tell a lot about people's health just by looking at their face.
I can. Oh, I love that you went here. Yes. I feel like it is almost like a superpower, but it's just, you can see so much about someone's health. And that's something that really, I like that, but it's also like, oh gosh, I wish they would get some help, because I know that longevity, you can see it in the face. You can see, when people are big drinkers, when they're smokers, when they're eating terrible, you can see the inflammation so clearly in their eyes, in their nose, funny enough. It's really It's pretty powerful. And I definitely notice I work with a lot of, you know, CEOs, high performers, and God, if they just knew. And so that was what really motivated me to get out there and start working with people in the corporate world. That's why I love that whole thing of working with, you know, again, high performers, CEOs, people that tend to have a lot of stress. If they can learn to channel that performance into their health, it's so fun to watch. It's so fun to have, like, kind of gamifying their health and showing them, you know, because I really like working with people and their blood work and wearables, so they can actually see that this isn't just wellness fluff, that the needle is turning, that you know, slight behavior changes. I try not to make people change all these things at once, but these little behaviors are making a huge difference in how they feel, and then they're seeing it in their blood work, and they're seeing it in their on their wearables, you know. So that's kind of fun.
And it's something we've talked about before, is that a wearable, whether it's a Whoop band, or I see you're wearing an Oura Ring, it's kind of a red pill that you can't go back from. Once you see how alcohol and other things, eating too close to bedtime, impacts your sleep score and your recovery, you can't go back. You can't do that with a clean conscience, let's say. Like, I'll still have ice cream before bed sometimes, but then I just wake up the next morning and I don't feel like I'm as rested. And speaking of helping people do small, easy shifts instead of completely restructuring their whole life, that's a question I did want to ask you today, which is, what are 2 or 3 easy changes, small changes that people can make that will really have an impact on their health?
I think the very first thing, and I always hesitate saying this because I think it feels a little metaphysical, but breathing is the quickest way to reset your body. And I know you just took a breath.
I always do that when people talk about breathing.
I know, I need to keep breathing because I get excited. But no one could tell you're doing it. Well, unless you are very intentional, which I could tell. But you could be sitting in a meeting and notice yourself getting activated, maybe frustrated or just stressed. Take 3 intentional breaths, and you don't have to skip a beat. No one, like I said, no one knows what you're doing. Breathe in for 4, hold for a second, out for 6 to 8. And that's a very quick signal to your nervous system that everything's okay and you don't need to stress, because that long exhale really lets your nervous system know you're not in danger. You can calm down. And it's so powerful. And I have to do it all day long because I know this work, I teach this work, and I still have like a nervous chihuahua for a nervous system. And I have to, stop, because I just have a fast internal motor. My daughter has the same thing. It's just, I can get anxiety just because I can be excited. It's not always stress, it's excitement. And reminding myself, like, okay, take a breath and calm down. I walk fast, I talk fast. It's really helpful for me. And I do it all day long.
I love that so much. The nervous chihuahua as a nervous system.
It just, like I said, very, very, very fast and slowing down, because it's such a good reminder to your nervous system. Then, okay, so I think I'm going to go with the, of course, my favorite, what you think, what you eat, how you move, and how you sleep. So let's start with what you think, a little tip on what you think. I always say the worst neighborhood you can be in, the scariest neighborhood, is in your own head. So a tip is think about what you think about. As humans, that's a superpower that we have. No other species that we at least know of have the ability to think about what we think about. And our brain is like, we think just like our heart beats without us thinking about it. We breathe without thinking about it. Sometimes we try and think about it. We think without thinking about it. And the more conscious we get of what we're thinking about, because how we're wired is 80% of what we think about is either not going to happen, it's negative, it's unhelpful, and it causes chemical responses in our brain and body that create more stress. It's a terrible loop if we're not paying attention. So pay attention to what you're thinking. Write it down. If you capture a thought that you might be thinking, because we get in these thought loops, write it down, because oftentimes it's not true, and you can rewrite a sentence that's more true. A lot of people think, oh, well, I just don't want to think positive things that don't feel true. But we often, in fact, 80% of the time, we're thinking thoughts that aren't true. So you might as well think things that are at least feel better.
Yeah.
That are creating more positive, helpful chemistry in your body, and come up with a sentence that you can change it to. One thing that when I find myself getting stressed, I think everything always works out for me. Sounds super cheesy, but guess what? I now have almost 54 years of data that proves to me, pretty much everything has worked out. So that feels like a true statement to me. So when I start to think something negative, I'm like, oh, stop. Everything works out. It's fine. It's fine.
I'm a big fan of that line of thinking. The way I say it is that everything always sorts itself out.
Yes.
Everything you've ever been up against, every challenge, every obstacle, every issue has always sorted itself out in one way or another.
I love that.
And if you're here breathing, listening to this podcast, it worked for you too.
It works.
And just reminding yourself of that is powerful. And then what also comes up for me as you share that is just the absurdity that we can stress ourselves out, trigger these hormonal releases of things we don't want, like cortisol and stress and all of the things, just from thinking about future scenarios that will probably never come true.
Right. And then you're operating from that chemical state, and it affects everything else in your day. And that's the thing, that we just have so much control over the chemistry that we produce in our brain and body, but we have to be paying attention. And listen, we're all human. Again, I know this work. I love this work. And it's moment by moment sometimes to just not go down a negative wormhole and let myself get all upset and freaked out because it affects the rest of my day. So I'm going to go back to, so there's a tip on what to think.
So we had breathing.
We had breathing. Now, what you think, pay attention, be diligent, write it down, think better thoughts. It's much more helpful. Next is eating. There is so much noise about what to eat. And that's usually the first question that people have when I work with them is, tell me what I need to eat. I'm like, oh gosh, there's a lot of information, but it's most important to eat real food. And anybody can look up, I always tell people, eat foods that are low on the glycemic index. And anyone can Google that, and it will give you a list of foods. Print it out, take a look, see what matches up for you. But low glycemic foods are going to cause less of a glycemic response in your body. So you're getting less of a sugar response. Glucose is sugar, for most people that don't know. And when you keep that spike low, your energy stays more consistent. Your mood, it's so much better because, you eat things that people don't think, that a lot of the things that they eat with processed food, sugar, junk, fried foods, it's causing an insulin or a glucose response that's throwing you into fight or flight. And I know that sounds dramatic, but you're getting a cortisol hit, and that causes stress on your body. And food is mood. That creates, it's so powerful. So really paying attention. And even when you do eat things, like, listen, food and alcohol are fun, but paying attention to kind of how your thoughts are, your mood after, especially if you eat those things on an empty stomach. So if you do eat those things, try and have it on, if you have protein or fiber first, it does help that spike. It lowers the spike. And that's a whole other conversation. I'm going to try not to go down a wormhole that we don't need to go down. But yes, low glycemic foods are a great way to start. Real foods. The next thing would be movement. And it's not having to spend an hour in the gym, which is great for some people, but isn't great for everybody. But movement, everybody needs. We are humans. We're built to move. We sit way more than we stand. And I love seeing a lot of people are standing while they work. It's just more natural for us to be standing and moving. And what that does, and I think this is such a powerful thing, I really want people to pay attention to this. When we eat, we have a glucose spike. We don't want it to spike super high, but we get glucose in our system. That's natural. That's how our body works. And if we are standing and moving, our muscles suck our glucose into them and it gets processed. But if we don't move, we need insulin, more insulin to go in and remove that glucose from our system. And that uses up our glucose. And then, that's what causes diabetes. And there's diabetes in young children now. 1 in 4 teens have prediabetes.
Wow.
And that's a shocking statistic. But, we all know that, well, we don't all know, I'm going to tell you, that 90% of American adults have at least one or more metabolic issue. That's a big number. And a lot of it is, there's a lot of things, but if movement is huge, it's huge. Get that glucose processed. When you eat something, 5 minutes can make a difference. But walk around. After dinner, my husband and I are so in the habit now that, we get up, we go for a walk around the neighborhood, even 10 minutes. It doesn't seem like a big deal, but it's processing through all that glucose, and it's causing, it's bringing it. First of all, it also helps you digest your food. Movement, right, is getting that food digested. And it just makes such a big difference on whether we gain weight, our mood, everything. It makes a huge difference. And it doesn't have to be big gym workouts, although I love that too. But walking and moving. If you're standing at a desk, if you're stuck at a desk, get up and do 10 body squats. Try and stand. If you have to, a lot of people are on conference calls now, walk outside or walk around your office. It all makes a difference. That little bit of movement adds up to a lot. And that's why I love the wearables, because again, you have that data that really motivates you to get that movement in. I love it.
The walking after meals has been a game changer for me, both after dinner for sure. Mika and I will do a little loop around my neighborhood now, but especially I've noticed here in the office after lunch, I'll just go walk up that hill, up and back. It takes probably 7 minutes.
Yeah.
And it's such a game changer. And I feel so different than if I eat a big meal and then just come back and sit down and start working.
Right. When our glucose is high, we don't think clearly. And that's a big thing, especially when we want to be high performers in all areas of our life. If you're digesting food, if your glucose is high, all those things suppress the ability to think clearly. And that's a big deal. And once you kind of know that stuff, you're like, oh, I can do that. That's easy. That's an easy one.
So many of these things are easy if we're aware of them and if we are intentional about them. And it makes me think of what I was telling you when we were setting up the podcast. I spent last weekend at Deer Park Monastery. It's a 400-acre Buddhist monastery just in Escondido, about an hour away, founded by Thich Nhat Hanh in the 80s. And the biggest takeaway from the entire weekend is how intentional the monks and nuns are about certain things. One of the things that they do is anytime a bell is rang, and they'll ring a bell at meal times, or if the clock, every hour it chimes, whatever you're doing, you could be mid-sentence with someone. You just stop, take a deep breath.
I love that.
And then you come back to the conversation. So it's just this semi-regular and also irregular bell during the day that just reminds you to pause,
right,
collect yourself, and then continue again. And I've started doing it in my own life. Anytime I switch tasks, I'll just stop for a moment. I'll actually put my hands together, make a little prayer posture, and I'll just take a deep breath. And then I'll go into the next thing. And it's been so cool and so helpful.
Oh my God.
And
so
the intentionality that they do everything with there. Thich Nhat Hanh was big on, if you're walking, know that you are walking. If you're breathing, know that you are breathing. And just really being mindful about what you're doing. So, like I said, everything, it's not rocket science. It's simple.
No, it's simple.
Easy things, but we have to be aware and intentional about them.
Right. And it reminds me when you say that, I enjoy the whole, we were talking about making tea. I got this little tea kettle and I just love it. I just get my hot water and and even just that process. And I think that's such a huge thing in the Asian cultures, but to bring it to reality for life, because we all get busy, but we have to do things that are kind of monotonous. And one of the things that I have to do, I feel like daily, because my kids are home from college right now, is fold towels. And it is so automatic now that when I fold towels, I do my breathing, my in for 4 and out for 6 to 8. And it's so ridiculous because I don't mind it, because it's just that moment in my day that I breathe, and it makes such a big difference to just calm me down. And I tend to think, better thoughts when I'm calmer. And so folding towels, and it's just, we all have to fold laundry and we all have to do our monotonous things. I don't mind them as much because it's now my opportunity to get myself centered. And I feel it, and I see it on my Oura ring. I absolutely, that is the most motivating thing. Like, I don't feel like I would be as good about it if I didn't see the data in real time. Like, wow, that really makes a difference. I can go from, and whether people know the Oura Ring app, or I know that I haven't seen the Whoop app, but I know it's similar. I can see throughout my day, and you can, it goes stressed, engaged, restored. Oh no, activated and restored or something like that. I'm probably messing that up. But I can be in full stress mode and take a deep breath, even for a few minutes. I have another tip. I'll tell you. That will put my nervous system right back down into restore mode. And that is a big deal for the rest of my day. There's a thing called yoga nidra, and it's not yoga, and I know you've heard about it. It's a meditation, and it's it's been around for thousands of years. And I discovered it, Andrew Huberman talks about it. And I discovered it probably 5 years ago. And I didn't really, I always thought, oh, this feels great. You can do 10 minutes, you can do 20, and they have like 2-hour ones. But I will do, I really like a 20-minute session, because I notice what a difference it makes on my Oura ring, and I love it. So AirPods, close your eyes, and it's just a body scan. And I can watch my Oura ring. It goes from stress and it goes down. In fact, I did one yesterday because I didn't even feel stressed yesterday. I think I was just busy and answering emails and doing that kind of thing. And I did one for 20 minutes, and the rest of my day, I never got into stress mode. And I just think that's so powerful. And again, I would have known it made me feel good. I wouldn't have known how powerful it is if I didn't have my Oura ring. And so I'm such a fan of really tracking. And I have turned so many people onto it, and their sleep data has changed. Their, again, the stress mode, because we are marinating in stress hormone all day long, and a lot of times at night because people aren't sleeping. And I think it's so powerful to understand what's going on inside of our bodies. And we now have, we have a good indication. We don't know 100%, but wearables are a huge way to understand what's really going on inside.
Super helpful. And it's also it makes a lot of sense why we're marinating in stress hormone, because most of us are trying to do like 9 things at the same time every moment of the day. We're trying to get ready for work while we're making our coffee, while we're thinking about the upcoming meeting. And then we get there, and then we have all these things going on. And that was another big takeaway from just being at the monastery for the weekend, is you have one thing to do. When you're eating breakfast, you're eating breakfast. After breakfast, before the next thing you have to do, there's probably like an hour and a half of just open space where you're sitting by this little lotus pond, just watching the fish. And then you have this next thing to do. Maybe it's a sitting meditation. And when you're meditating, that's all you have to do. And then after that, you're doing your work meditation where you're working. I was helping carve out a trail that had been overgrown by bushes, but like that was it. Like I was literally just working on the trail. There wasn't anything else going on.
Yeah.
And it makes me think of what you said about folding towels. If you focus your attention 100% on what you're doing, the most monotonous, mundane task can actually become enjoyable because you're fully present, you're fully there. You're not folding towels while talking on the phone, while trying to plan the vacation that's coming up next week.
Right.
You are just there. And I noticed that when at the end of each meal we would wash our dishes, complete silence was part of both at the beginning of the meal and after. You were silent and just washing dishes, not thinking about anything, not talking to anyone. It was actually enjoyable. And I was like, wow, maybe this will help me hate doing my dishes less at home.
Right. God, that is so cool. And It is. I mean, our environment is just, it's causing us major health problems. And I just think the more awareness that we have around it, and I think that's why I've been so passionate about creating the DIG method, because I feel like I've taken what is often overlooked foundations of human health, circadian rhythm, nervous system regulation, and really understanding how to activate or deactivate some of the chemistry that we produce, because it's killing us. And that sounds, again, traumatic, but when we have, I mean, cortisol is part of the circadian rhythm. You're supposed to get that cortisol spike in the morning. That's what wakes you up and gives you energy. Adrenaline is very important, because if a child runs in front of your car and you need to swerve out of the way, your adrenaline hits before your brain even knows what's going on. You react. We need these chemicals, but we are spending so much of our day just marinating in it, and it's causing inflammation. It's causing us to not even be able to think with our highest potential, because when we're in that fight or flight state, our focus narrows, and it's just, we get hyper focused on things that don't matter, and we need to just take that breath, look up, look into the distance, all these different techniques of how to calm your nervous system. But even the news and information, I have to watch it because, and you're probably like me, I love information. I always want to learn what's going on and what's new and exciting and all the data. But even when I'm walking, I'm really trying to listen to more even frequency music and things that will kind of tune my nervous system versus more information, because it's still, I enjoy it, but it's still stress. It's still more information that my body needs less of.
Yeah, and I feel like there's always a trade-off between doing something that feels good and exciting and stimulating in the moment, and then how you feel long term. And what I mean by that is, I would way rather listen to a podcast pretty much at any moment of the day, when I'm doing the dishes, or I'm driving to work, or I'm on a walk, and it feels good short term. Again, we're very similar. We love consuming information, but I've noticed that if I sit with the discomfort of silence on the drive, or while doing dishes, or while walking, I notice I just feel more peaceful later on. And it's not that I never listen to podcasts anymore, but I stopped filling all of my time with external noise, because I noticed just zooming out holistically, I felt a deeper sense of peace. And that was the biggest takeaway from this weekend at the monastery. I didn't have any life-changing breakthroughs while I was there. Honestly, the whole thing was kind of unorganized, and there was way more downtime than I was expecting. There was just 5 hours one day where I was just kind of sitting around waiting for something to do, which was actually perfect. It's what I needed. But the biggest takeaway was that I just feel so much more at peace coming away from it, because I just unplugged from so many different things.
God, we don't unplug, do we?
And even I turned my phone off for 2 days, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to turn my phone off for 48 hours and I'm going to feel so good, and it's going to be probably challenging in the moment. And when I turn it back on, it might be stressful, but none of that happened. I turned it off, kind of forgot about it. There was maybe one time when I was like, okay, I haven't known what time it is for 2 days.
Yeah.
I need to make sure I'm here at the right time. But it wasn't that big, wow, I need to do this, once a week or once a month for the rest of my life. It was just kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
And then coming back, I'm not super stressed out by my phone, but it is this kind of all of the things compounding on each other. These past few days, I've felt a sense of peace that I haven't felt in a while. And I think it's because I didn't do anything for 2 days.
Yeah.
And life went on.
That's pretty powerful. Right. I just think that we are programmed. We're programmed to just hustle and perform. And there's a lot of, things that I feel like if we understand just these little shifts that make such a big difference. It's not these big, huge things. And I just think that it's habitual. And I love, again, going back to my Aura ring, it's been fun to watch the ways that I've been able to improve that has taken me years. It took me 2 years to finally figure out how to get my heart rate variability, which is how my body's dealing with stress, to get it in a healthy range. And I was like, again, thinking I'm so healthy, I think all these good thoughts, but there's still things that, again, that information overload. It's too hard on our nervous system. And I love what you said about when you unplugged, you felt you're still feeling the effects of it.
Yeah. More so now than while I was actually unplugged.
Right. And we have more access to our strategic thinking, our creative thinking when we're calm. And that's the only time we have access to that. And it's like we can push harder. And, one thing, I work with a lot of women in my own age group. And, things change hormonally. Just cortisol goes up just simply because of aging. And that is so frustrating for so many people, including me. It's like, wait a minute, your estrogen goes down, cortisol is going to naturally go up. So you have to kind of really be intentional about the ways that you're calming your nervous system all day long. And for me, I would get up, and I love getting up earlier before everyone. Journaling was always a way I felt like calm my nervous system. But I'd get my coffee and sit down with my journal and my poodle for, 15, 20 minutes. But I did a cortisol test, and my functional health doctor is like, your cortisol is spiked all day long. And I'm like, what? And she's like, yeah. And so that really, having that data, and again, I know it kind of goes back to like, oh God, data overload, but there is a time where it's good to you got to shine a light on what's going on before you can fix it. And so it was fun to finally kind of go through and think, what are the things that I'm doing? Is it what I'm thinking? Is, and realizing that I was drinking that caffeine first thing in the morning, and I try not to bombard people with technical stuff, but you get that cortisol hit in the morning naturally if your circadian rhythm is in sync, but it stays high if you add caffeine on top of that. Or it was staying high for me, and it stays high for a lot of people, and that was affecting my day. It was because it was just my cortisol was staying high, so I had that that little bit of anxiety and nervous energy. That I changed that, and I went to drinking tea. And then later in the morning, after I've worked out, I've been up for an hour and a half, 2 hours, then I'll have some caffeine, but I also have coffee with less caffeine. I have that mushroom coffee, and that's made a big difference too. But all these little things that you can do, and sometimes gradually, because they tend to stick when you gradually add shifts. And not having coffee in the morning is really sounds like a tough one, but when you start to feel the difference, you get momentum because it feels so good to feel calm internally.
One last little health tip I want to ask about, and then we'll take a bit of a left turn, is tell us why eating right before bed is bad.
Okay. I did my first video on this, as you know. I really love telling people this. Now, one body process can suppress another. So when we're digesting food, it suppresses other chemistry that helps us when we want to fall asleep. So I always tell people, give yourself at least 2 to 3 hours before bed with no food, no calories, maybe water, maybe some hot tea, no sweetener, 0 calories, so that your digestive chemistry can rest, and your chemistry that it takes to go to sleep, the melatonin. You'll start producing melatonin as the sun goes down. That red light that you see when the sun's going down, the lower lighting. We always, one thing that we did when the babies were little is dim the lights so that you start telling our brain it's time for bed, and then your body will start producing the melatonin. When you do go to sleep, you fall asleep and you get into deep sleep. And you get into deep sleep and your body produces human growth hormone. And that is like a self-cleaning oven for your brain and body. It repairs cells, it regenerates, and it heals in so many ways, and we need that human growth hormone. But if we're not getting into deep sleep, we don't get the value of that chemical. And so when you're digesting food, you don't get into deep sleep, and it's so important. And that's been, I can't tell you how many people say, that changed everything. You know, that bowl of cereal I would have, you know, an hour before bed or even closer. I don't even do it. And it's just habitual. It's habit. People get into habits of what, you know, they do at night, and I just got in the habit of making a cup of tea, and that's like the signal to my brain that my eating window's closed, and it's not hard anymore. Things can be hard at first until your body's used to it, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I don't even think about it anymore.
I like that idea of making a cup of tea because it's a signal that we're done eating, but it's also something to do after eating, because I think dessert or a little sweet treat after eating is mostly just because we don't know what to do next. We're like, oh, I'm done, but I have 3-4 hours before bed. Like, I need to do something. So making that cup of tea could be really helpful.
Yeah, just with habit formation and habit deconstruction, replacing a habit is the most effective way. And that was for me, because you're right. I was in the habit of, you know, just having a little sweet treat, nothing major, but I really like the process of, you know, like you said, the tea, and it's just such a signal to me. And I don't ever think about eating when I close my eating window now.
That's been the biggest thing I've noticed recently from my Whoop data, is that if I don't eat 2 to 3 hours before bed, my recovery is way higher, which getting into like the specifics is really hard. So I went to bed at 9 last night. Like, I had lights out. I fell asleep at 9:03. And to do that, I had to stop eating. I think I stopped eating at 6:30. Yeah, it was 6:30 exactly. But like, that's tough. I had to intentionally leave the office a little bit earlier so I could go home and cook dinner. I had to stop by the grocery store on the way home. So it's hard to do that all the time. And I've noticed the biggest difference in terms of how I feel and what my data is telling me when I do that. And when I avoid the ice cream or even the late night protein shake, because it's so interesting. I mean, a lot of men and women, but especially men, are always trying to get bigger, build muscle. And we have protein right before we go to bed because that's supposed to help and extend the amount of time we have protein in our body, but it's inadvertently affecting the human growth hormone from the deep sleep. So that late night protein shake might actually be harming you more than it is helping.
Right. Yeah, and I know there's a lot of different data out there, and that's why for me, I like being able to see what works. And I don't pretend to think that what works for me is going to work for everyone, but I go back to what makes sense physiologically. And so people ask me a lot of stuff. There's a lot of bro science and stuff on TikTok, and my sons are always like, Mom, what do you think about this? And I don't want to immediately say, well, that doesn't work. But maybe the protein before bed works for some people, but it definitely affects my recovery. And I think when you do chart that and you think, or track it, you really realize, I think that recovery is worth more, because that's when your body's repairing itself and building muscle and doing all the things that you need it to do. So that's just what makes sense to me. It's pretty crazy what some of the information and the noise out there says. So again, I don't pretend to know everything. I just like to go with how my body responds. And also I always say to people is that, you know, stopping or closing your eating window 2 to 3 hours before bed, it doesn't always happen. We had a client dinner the other night, and we didn't even go out until 7. And of course, I'm always like, dang it. You know, I love the gratification of my data the next morning, and I know it's affected. But we live a normal life. We go out to dinner later. We, you know, eat sweet treats and have fun and have, you know, a couple drinks here and there. It's normal, but it definitely, I can see it. I notice it every time. So it is what it is. Thank goodness most of my days, and I mean some of my days, I'll close my eating window at 4 just to switch it up, because I think it's fun to trick your body a little bit and not get so habitual.
You mentioned that you made a video about why you shouldn't eat before bed, and I want to take a left turn here into why you made that video, what us working together was like, and what you've seen as a result of our time together.
Oh, okay. I love this. I I think you said you went to Toastmasters as well, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I was a Toastmaster girl, really, really having to work on, if I was going to get my message out there, I had to be able to talk about it and stand up in front of people. And a talk that I did late last year before we started working together was about accountability. And being a coach and a consultant, I know the power of accountability. And doing the research for that talk really made me even more like, oh my gosh. And I may mess this up, but there's data that, if we decide, we just make a decision, we're going to, stop eating 2 hours before bed, whatever the goal is, lose 10 pounds. You have a 10% chance of that goal happening if you just decide. It jumps up to like 40% if you write it down. It jumps to like 65% if you tell someone. But if you decide on the goal, you write it down, you tell someone, and that fourth step, you have weekly check-ins with an accountability person, coach that you trust and feel, there's certain people that you might not feel as accountable to, but I knew I needed that accountability partner. The chances of you achieving those goals goes up to 95%. And that's as good as done. That's a big number. And so my goal going into 2025 was to do new things, meet new people, have new experiences, and find someone who could be my accountability coach. And in January, I was invited to a networking group by a friend. And my immediate reaction was, oh, I don't think I'm going to go. And then immediately I thought, you promised to go have new experiences, meet new people. So I called her back. I'm like, okay, I'm going to go. And I went. And during that time, you stood up and said, I have a bold action workshop on Saturday. And this was a Friday, like the second Friday in January or the third. And immediately I thought, oh, that's interesting. And you're like, it's right here in Carlsbad. Here's the flyer, passed it out. And I was like, okay. I actually took a picture of the QR code and thought, that'd be neat. New experiences, new people. And then I forgot about it by Friday night. Saturday morning, I get up, I'm working out, and it's like 8 o'clock, and your workshop started at 10 o'clock. And I thought, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. That's today. Looked at the QR code, made myself pay for it immediately, jumped in the shower, and I showed up at your bold action workshop. And it was exactly what I needed. That was a cool experience. But even after that, I called you and said, I want to work together because of the accountability. And you were so awesome. You asked all the right questions. We created a plan together. And Thursday was the end of our 12 weeks of working together. And my goal was to create a video that I could post online because that was something I had so much resistance around. And even on Thursday morning, I had done several practice videos for you. I had been doing that leading up to this. But I was like, oh no, these are not the ones I want to post. And I had already talked myself out of posting a video on Thursday. I already had my whole story about what I was going to say to you, about why I wasn't going to post a story, and that I would do it next week. And we had our session, and you were so encouraging, and you told me exactly what part of the video to post, and I posted my first video. And not only that, which is super exciting, is that we went over all the goals that I had planned with you, and that I had reached all of them.
100%. You hit them all. I'm so proud of you, and I want to just acknowledge you for that. The fact that you took something that you learned about, the power of accountability, you implemented it into your life, and you actually started walking the walk instead of just talking the talk. And I mean, so many things I want to say about this. One, that is probably my number one job as a coach, is to not believe the stories that my clients tell me.
It was a good one. It was a good one.
That was a great story. Could totally empathize and understand. And
You
then
did.
still, you said you wanted to do this. And again, I'll never force people to do anything, but I can playfully encourage them. And speaking of playful encouragement, you are still one of my favorite people who came to the Bold Action workshop, because we uncovered throughout all of that. And it's funny that we ended up working, a lot of our coaching was kind of around the same thing. But during the workshop, you talked about wanting to get comfortable on camera, post on social media, just share this knowledge you have. And you were like so worried about recording a video, and you finally were like, okay, that'll be my dream for some time in the future. I will record a video and post it on social media. And I was like, okay, great. My office is over there. Here's a light. I like locked you in here.
In this exact office.
And was like, okay, we'll see you in 30 minutes. We can't wait to see the video.
Oh my gosh. And that, I remember sitting in here thinking, this is what I asked for. This is what I wanted. This is getting uncomfortable. And I was uncomfortable by myself recording a video. I was so uncomfortable. I'm like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so awkward? But it, little by little, it got easier. And there are a lot of videos that I sent to you, but it got easier.
It gets easier. It's just practice. And I think everyone should go through the experience of trying to make a short, concise video, because you have all of these moments where you're almost at the end and you freeze and your mind goes blank. And then you just have a video of yourself being like, oh, damn it. Like you're going to just watch all of those little funny things where you're like getting mad at yourself.
Yes, but it's so cool. When I say I'm on the other side of it, ish. I mean, there's still lots of work to do. But one thing, a story that I told you that you kind of used on me, which is great, is I just never want to sit on the sidelines of my own life. It makes me a little bit emotional. And I love all the things that I've done. 3 awesome kids. I've got a great marriage, almost 30 years. But I didn't want to regret not doing what I knew I wanted to do. So thank you for the encouragement. My kids have encouraged me, my husband. And, we jokingly talk about this story about my oldest son, Kane. He's a super talented guy, but soccer was not his sport. Young, but he didn't care because all of his buddies were on the soccer team, so he was going to be on the soccer team, and he wasn't in the sidelines. He was in the game. He was running after the ball super enthusiastically, but he wouldn't kick the ball. And we were like, Kane, kick the ball. You're fast, right? Come on, kick the ball. And so I've always used that as an analogy for my life. I've always been a great cheerleader, but the cheerleaders are on the side of the field. And I got in the game. I've been in the game for a while now. Listen to me, God. But I needed to kick the ball. And so you and I talked about that. You're like, you're in the game. You're in the game. That felt really good. I've done a lot of things in the last 12 weeks that seem so out of my comfort zone. And I did it, and I survived. But kicking the ball was doing the video and uploading it and being seen, and oh gosh, that sounded so terrifying. But I kicked the ball. You
kicked the ball, and let's just check in. When you kicked the ball, did you die? Did you spontaneously combust?
No, I lived, and it was so exhilarating. We sound so nerdy, but it really was. You do things that seem to be hard, and then you're like, oh wait, I did it. And I want to keep doing those things in my life, and I feel like I now want to be an example for my kids to take bold action. And I love that 2 out of 3 of my kids have been to your bold action workshop. And even in the last week, seeing just some of the shifts in them, because it is exhilarating when you do things and you build momentum on that. And God, it's just so fun.
And I think maybe that's where we can go for the end of the conversation. It's something I definitely wanted to work in. after getting to meet your two sons, who are amazing, and knowing that you've sent me several Scott Galloway videos,
Love Scott Galloway.
what do you think young men need right now? Because a lot of young men are struggling. I'd say your sons are doing great. They are in the small percentage of people who seem to have a direction and have it together. But let's just talk about young men for a little bit, because I know we're both pretty passionate about helping them.
Yes. Oh boy, I am so passionate about that. And I feel like so many of them are living in a zone of comfort. And I don't think, I'm going to speak as a parent. I know you're not a parent yet, but I know you see a lot of these things. We all parented these kids so hard with the best of intentions. My husband and I were very intentional in every phase of our kids' lives. And it was just cultural. We all did so much for them. Every single thing they did was observed and orchestrated. And I think now we all realize that humans need to develop. They need to do hard things. They need to not have everything structured. They need to struggle to figure it out, not just have the path paved or, smooth for them, because it doesn't build resilient humans. And, there's a lot of things that I think our kids were, our twins were 16 when the pandemic happened. Our youngest was 14. Those are some tough things, and I think it knocked the legs out of underneath a lot of people, including our kids. And so I think through that, my husband and I both realized, like, we need to let them do hard things to build their resilience, because especially our youngest, he's a pretty sensitive guy, and we want to make things not so, we wanted to not see him struggle. And that it's the struggle. It's being uncomfortable. And I'm doing it now as a 53-year-old. It builds your resilience. And I think that's what these men need. I think they need that, knowing that you can't give someone self-esteem. You have to earn it on your own. And that comes with doing hard things and failing and knowing you're okay. And I think that's a big thing for me, is knowing that, you have to be willing to fail, or you're not swinging it out there hard enough. And knowing you can fail and be okay. Because you've seen a lot of my bad videos, right? I mean, going back to the video thing. But, they can't win at everything. And that's the biggest thing, I think, for these young men. And as parents, we've got to do our best to push them out, not let them stay comfortable, because we're not doing them any favors. And that's been tough, because it's been what has been really real for my husband and I. We've had to make some hard decisions, and you don't want to see your kids struggle, but watching them rise up from the struggle, it's so awesome.
I really resonate with what you're saying around not wanting to let your kids struggle. I don't have kids yet, but I can only imagine what it's like to have a human that you co-created with your life partner, to want to smooth everything out, to want to get the obstacles out of the way, to want to say, hey, pay attention, in a half mile there's a pit full of snakes you might fall into. But it's through them going through those hardships that they build the character, the confidence. I'm really resonating with what you're saying about self-esteem and confidence. It's actually what we ended up talking about at the workshop it was 5 19-year-olds and 1 21-year-old and myself. And I've never felt so old. It was hilarious. But we talked a lot about confidence, and also how to have confidence, how to build confidence if you are doing things that are different. Like if you decide to drink less, if you're not partying all the time. Right. And that, to me, was one of the most formative experiences of my life, is when I decided to stop drinking, because then I had to actually become an interesting, conversationally capable person.
Right.
I could no longer drink 7 beers and just not remember what I was saying. I actually had to muster up the courage to go talk to people. And it's only through the discomfort and the repetition of all of that I built confidence and I built the self-esteem. I used to have such low self-esteem.
Right.
Outwardly, I seemed confident, but on the inside, I was super insecure.
Right. God, that's so true. I mean, I always say there's confident people and there's liars. I think we're all, right? I think we're all that nervous chihuahua in the corner, but you build your resilience to swing it out there. And, the confidence does really come, and then other areas will show up and show you where you're not confident. And you're like, okay, here we go. But yeah, I think I'm so happy to hear that you have such a passion for helping young adult men, because you're just enough ahead. You say you feel old, but they don't want to hear it from their parents. They've heard enough from their parents. All we can do is model the behavior we hope that they want to have in their own lives. And I have to say, I always thought, like, God, do they really see what we do and hear what we say? And they do. If you're a parent, trust that they do. I mean, for the good and bad, right? There's certain things you're like, oh God. But I'm now seeing my young adult children and watching, looking at what their refrigerators look like. Like, I just feel so proud. Like, oh my gosh, they really want to eat healthy and they understand, why they want to work out and how it makes them feel, and keeping their spaces tidy because it's such a reflection of what's going on in your head. And, they're just, you start to see it. And there really is power in modeling, because you can say it until you're blue in the face, but you have to model the behavior. But for you, they really admire what you've done in your path, and you're just enough ahead of them where they can see themselves in you. And I think that's so cool.
It's fun. It's definitely something I want to lean more into, because if I can help people go through the hard parts of life that I went through with a little more confidence, a little more self-esteem, and just a knowing that it's through getting uncomfortable and that it's supposed to be uncomfortable.
Right.
If I can help people with that would be huge. If I can convey and encourage the things that I used to be so afraid of, like shaking while you're speaking or getting sweaty pits or sweaty palms. Like, I was terrified of that. I thought that meant that I was not normal, that I had something wrong with me. And it's like, no, that's your body's indication, your body letting you know that you're doing something awesome and that you're getting out there.
I love what you said about, it's not just like knowing and actually kind of looking forward to the discomfort, because if you're not uncomfortable, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. You're not going for what you want, because it is uncomfortable. And my brother would say things that, I've been speaking on stages, which was very, very uncomfy for me. It's getting better. But he would say, the butterflies in your stomach, that's just telling you you're about to do something awesome. That is not nervousness. That's awesomeness, and that is excitement. And really just reframing that to actually look forward to knowing what that means, because nervousness and anxiety feels the same. And if you can reframe it to that, and that really made a difference. And I think that message that you sent, especially for my sons and their friends, is to look forward to those uncomfortable times, because it's like, oh, okay, this is just pushing me forward, and be okay with fumbling forward, because that's all I'm doing right now. That's all I ever do. Yes, so true.
Just doing it messy, learning along the way, sharing the lessons, and so most importantly, laughing and celebrating how bad I used to be. It's what I sent you. You asked me, oh, you've recorded like 200 something podcasts. Do you think you've changed a lot from doing so many? And I just laughed and said, let me send you 2 clips and you tell me.
Gosh, that was awesome.
And the clip of me on episode 1 of the Dare to Dream podcast compared to whatever clip I sent you, maybe like 220. I'm a different person. Totally. I look different. I speak different. I'm so much more alive. And I posted that on LinkedIn yesterday, and one of my friends who's a speaker coach, he sent me his first video on TikTok, and it is so bad. It is so funny. And I texted him back and I was like, Matt, we just created a tradition. I hope every few
I love
years
this.
we get to send each other videos and just laugh at how bad we were, how cringeworthy our content was. And this other guy commented and said, you should thank that past version of yourself for being cringy so that you don't have to be now.
Oh, I love that whole thing is making it, something that you're kind of excited to show people. And I want to always just erase all these bad videos because, oh my gosh, it's so hard to watch, but it's so great, so I'm making myself keep them. And funny enough, just a quick side note is in my photography business, my business partner and I, we did not know how to use artificial lighting. We were known as the natural light photographers, which meant we are petrified of any kind of artificial light and flash. But my husband signed us up to be the photographers for this event, and it was indoors. And so we had just started working together. So we bought these lights from Amazon that just stay on. We didn't have to worry about the flash. And so we set these lights up and we did headshots for free, thank goodness. And the headshots were great, but everyone was blue because these lights were just these very harsh blue lights. And we look back at that and we took a picture of ourselves next to our blue lights and we laughed so hard because we're like, you know what? We were still throwing it out there. We learned so much from that experience. And though everyone was blue, we worked a little bit with the coloring in Photoshop, and everyone seemed to love them. But we look back like, oh my gosh. But you know what? We were putting the work in, and you don't learn unless you're doing the work. You can't read it from a book. No one can tell you. You have to do it. And then you go, oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. I can do it this way. And that's what really helped me with growing this business is understanding it's not going to be pretty. I'm going to fumble around, but that's okay. I'm going to just keep fumbling forward and keep throwing it out there and, try not to be so sensitive to anybody who makes fun of me because that's going to happen. I love what you posted the other day about like some comment, someone made fun of you and you're like, okay, yes, this means I'm doing it.
Yeah. If you don't have any haters, you aren't really saying or doing anything that's worth hating.
So true.
That's super important. And then I just love what you're saying there. The whole blue light fiasco is you kicking the ball. And I think that's one of the most meaningful, fulfilling moments of the entire journey are those moments where I get to say, wow, I was so bad then and I am so much better now. And like I said before, I hope that every 5 years I am morbidly embarrassed by how bad I was 5 years ago.
Totally. That's so great. Just keep throwing the stick out. That's what I want for myself and for the people I love.
And that's what you're doing. I think this is a perfect place to wrap up with just celebrating you. You hit all of your goals for our coaching.
Yay.
You've been on stage giving your 18-minute foundational TEDx style talk, which you are going to give a TEDx talk in the future.
Oh, yes, profess.
I know it.
Say it.
And
I'm going to do it.
You're absolutely going to do it. You've been speaking in front of CEOs, super high-powered business people, your husband's peers, which is so much scarier than a group of strangers because you want to look good for them, you want to look good for him. So I just want to acknowledge and celebrate you for all of the work you've done over the past few months, and I'm just so grateful to know you. I'm so grateful that I've met your sons. I'm slowly infiltrating the family, and thanks so much for making the time to come on and share with us today.
Oh, this was awesome. Thank you. And I cried. Dang it.
You should celebrate that. I think
Yes,
crying is a beautiful thing.
Oh my gosh. Thank you. Oh, so awesome.
And thank you everyone for tuning in with us today. As always, we love you guys, and we'll see you next time.